As castings solidify, grains form, then join together to make the casting, which is where we're at there. Think of salt used for snow melting. These are big grains of salt, and in a bucket, because of the grain size, there is a lot of space created between the grains where air fills. Think of table salt. These are smaller grains. They sit closer together, and there is less area for air to be between them. As a casting sets up, if the grains are larger, there will be lots of places for hydrogen to hide in the casting. This is porosity. If a casting sets up with small grains, there is less places for hydrogen to exist, so there is less porosity. This is why smaller grain size is good. The practice of grain refining aluminum has been going on since 1930. It wasn't until 1970, in the invention of master alloys, did grain refining become much simpler. Today's master alloys, aluminum, titanium, and boron, aluminum tie-bar, are extremely powerful, and a lot is not needed. So in the general, grain refinement in casting tends to reduce the amount of porosity and the size of the pores. This improves those mechanical properties we mentioned earlier. Feeding the casting when it turns from a liquid to a solid is also improved. This reduces the shrinkage and hot tears and cracks. Technically speaking, grain refining raises the temperature the casting becomes a solid, which allows grains to have a longer time to form. We use what is referred to as tie bar buttons as a master alloys. Once added to the melt, they take between 10 to 15 minutes to melt and be effective. In 356 aluminum, the boron part of the grain refiner does the most work. Grain refinement tends to work because the first 50 to 60% of the solidification process tends to be where the grains are formed. Gas porosity tends to form in the last 5 to 10% of the solidification process. Small grains form early, then gas has nowhere to. Interestingly, large, continuous foundry operations have grain refining wire that is continuously fed into the melt. Talk to your supervisor as to when they add grain refineries to the melt. Hide in the cast.